Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another day with Kirby Summers on my True Crime podcast. Today is November the 30th. And before I get started, I want to do two things. I want to thank all of you who have shown up repeatedly for years to lend your support to me. And also, I want to thank those of you who take the time to subscribe and who like the video. So for those of you who have not liked the video, like it, please. I want to go over a couple of things today. First, I want to quickly give you a heads up on what's happening with Ghislaine Maxwell. As you know, she married Scott Borgerson, who was married at the time when they met in 2014. And he used to be, according to mainstream media reports and court documents. In fact, I have looked at the very court documents that mainstream has cited. He would beat up his first wife. He wasn't very nice to her. He has 2 children with her. He was very abusive toward her in front of the children. In any event, he met Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine was pretty much on the run already. I'm going to call it on the run because she was trying to remain low-key and out of the way because Epstein had gotten out of jail and her name had been dragged into, and appropriately it was dragged into, the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring. And as you know, it didn't just consist of children, although there were children, but it consisted of age people, not just female, but males as well. And so she decided to marry Scott Borgerson, and by checking property documentation of where Scott Borgerson lived before that and what he was connected to, and that he had help from Isabel Maxwell, Ghislaine's sister, to transfer Ghislaine's money to him, where I think she felt if she ever got arrested, her money would not be jeopardized. And that was actually, it proved to be right, because when she was finally arrested in 2020 or 2019, it was actually 2020, I think, or maybe, I can't remember. It could have been I'm going to call it 2020 because I don't have the date of her, but it was during the 4th of July weekend. It was after Jeffrey Epstein had been found suicided, surprise, surprise, in his cell, and she was found living in this $1 million mansion in New Hampshire. And when she appeared in court for her bail hearing, she was not forthcoming about either her income or her savings or her multiple passports or the fact that she was even married. The marriage to Scott Borgerson came up afterwards. In any event, once she was found to be guilty of 5, and the press gets it wrong, they call it 5 out of 6 charges. It's really 5 out of 8 charges, because the 2 perjury charges disappeared into the wind, never to be seen or heard from again, so that they've done everything they can to help her along. But here's the kicker. Her attorneys made it clear to tell the public when she was sentenced that, hey, we're already working on the appeal. We're going to fight this. Well, guess what? Scott Borgerson, her hubby, I'm sorry, it's too funny. It's funny because it's her and she's done so much evil. So yeah, I'm going to find it funny because she has got the worst taste in men than anybody on the planet. If you thought you could not pick a good guy, Ghislaine Maxwell is the poster child, or should become the poster child, for if you're a really horrible person, follow me home, because that's who she is. So anyway, he refuses to pay the attorneys, and they refuse to work for free. Sure. Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys, who, by the way, also represent Nicholas Tartaglione. You remember that name? If you don't, give it a Google. They don't want to work for free, and so it has, quote, stalled, end quote, any appeal on the part of Ghislaine Maxwell. All right, so moving on to part 2. Now, if you have not liked the video, please like the video, and subscribe. I want to clarify for you once and for all the word mega as it pertains to Jeffrey Epstein, because the people who have reported mega have gotten it wrong. Literally, they've gotten it wrong. So for those of you who do not know who I am a sex slave survivor of a man by the name of Rickless. His father financed Ariel Sharon. His father was in the military in the UK alongside Robert Maxwell. His father, Rickless, was transferred to Ohio State University. Yes, where Leslie Wexner is. Wexner eventually purchased learner shops from Rickless. And so the Rickless family, who has not been talked about except for 1 or 2 people on their podcast, are very much a part of this ring. This ring is not just about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Leslie Wexner, and every now and then somebody will remember to add Leon Black. You know, these guys go back generations and they continue to present day. But to tell you about how mega has been, in a way, misappropriated. All right, so as you know, the newspapers, which is part of mainstream media press, so that includes television shows, that includes the news, that includes the cartoons, that includes the songs that you listen to, it includes the movies that you see. Everything mainstream is controlled by intelligence. And I'm not going to get into on this show CIA Mossad, because from my perspective and my own life experience, they work collaboratively, okay? And again, I will probably do a whole show on CIA, Mossad, and the armed forces and all of that separately. However, what they do is, if a story leaks, so there might be, let's say, for example, a new editor or a new journalist working at a newspaper somewhere. So in this case, let's use Gary Webb as a good example, who was working for a kind of smallish newspaper that not that many people had heard of in San Jose, California. And he wrote that amazing story that finally outed the CIA's connection to the heroin trade. And once he came out and did this, the CIA was like, hey guys, he told the New York Times, he told the Wall Street Journal, that they told, and I'm saying I'm sorry for CIA. In my mind, I just see the CIA as a big, bad man, but I'll call it what it is. The agencies turned around and told the newspapers, say that this guy is a fantasist, that he is, that it's not true, right? Push back on this and make him, marginalize him, make him sound like he's a Looney Tune, that he did not really travel to Colombia. He did not really speak to these people, that he did not really get any of that. This is just a figment of his imagination. And so they did that. And, as time has moved on, we know that Gary Webb was right. Okay, let's get back to Mega. So, a journalist working for a newspaper wrote a story in May of 1997 for the Washington Post. And this got published, although it was removed almost immediately. And the Washington Post article reads in part, according to a source who viewed a copy of the NSA transcript of the conversation, the intelligence officer speaking in Hebrew said, "The ambassador wants me to go to Mega to get a copy of the letter." The source said the supervisor in Tel Aviv rejected the request, saying, "This is not something we use Mega for." So, okay, so when a reporter followed up, a senior National Security Council officer declined to comment. So the NSA didn't say yes or no as to whether or not the story was true. White House spokesperson Michael McCurry, who was traveling with President Clinton in Mexico, also refused to comment. Notice that this was happening during the time that Clinton, a Mossad shill, that's what he is, a Mossad shill and a rapist, was in office. So the evidence the FBI had been able to collect, according to this newspaper report that, again, was only online for a day or two and then it was removed, referenced a January 16, 1997 letter from then Secretary of State Warren Christopher, who wrote to Yasser Arafat. Now, Arafat was the leader of Palestine at the time, and it spelled out U.S. guarantees for Israeli troop withdrawal from the West Bank. Now, there was a hidden mole in Clinton's White House. And to be frank with you, there were many more than one hidden mole, okay? And I know this for a fact. However, in Clinton's White House, a hidden mole would have been a really big scandal, much bigger than the Jonathan Pollard case, much bigger than the Monica Lewinsky case. It just would have been a much bigger scandal. So what happened was a couple of things. There was a lot of chatter in Clinton's White House once this story came out, and again, it was removed, and nobody was making any comments. But insiders of Bill Clinton's White House were kind of like chatting amongst themselves, trying to figure out, well, who is this mole? There's got to be a mole. The FBI was instructed by Bill Clinton, because they began to investigate who is a mole that's hiding inside the White House. We have to find them. Now, keep in mind that at the same time that this is happening, it's almost hypocritical, because at the same time that this is happening, the White House is being serviced by 3 different phone companies, all of which belong to Israel. So 3 Israeli-based phone companies who obviously have access to every single phone call that was made from the White House, where the President of the United States resides and from where he controls the country theoretically, right? So the Mossad in Israel had access to all of that information anyway, but they wanted additional information from the mole, who they figured had, there's nothing that can compare to human intelligence. And that is why human intelligence will never go away. So as much as they can bug our phones, bug the internet, bug your, watch us with all kinds of cameras everywhere, human intelligence is much more prized than any of the electronic stuff that they do. So they were really trying to get to the mole, but we're told, no, we don't use Mega for that. Okay. So what happened was there was a second mention on May 4th, 1998 in the Wall Street Journal. And now Mega is referred to as the titans of industry join forces to work for Jewish philanthropy. It named a group of powerful men, including Leslie Wexner, Seagram's chairman Edgar Bronfman Sr., movie mogul Steven Spielberg, and it claimed, the article, that they had formed a, quote, study group, end quote, known informally as the Mega Group. They went on to say in this second article that repeats the term Mega, the Mega Group was formed in 1991. Okay, so they're trying to say that it was formed in 1991, which would precede that article that came out the year before in 1997. However, this is a planted story. This is the kind of stuff that my abuser would tell me about. A lie within a lie within a lie within a lie, and it's all illusion. What you, the public, learn, you just read and you believe what you read. And apparently some of the people that are covering the Jeffrey Epstein case appear to believe there's an actual group called Mega. There is no such group called Mega. I know, because I was part of that group, meaning I was the sex slave of the Ricklesses, who would have belonged to a group like this. A group like this, do you think a group of men, billionaires, would get together without having a nonprofit? There's no paperwork for a Mega study group. No paperwork. That's your first tip off, okay? Any kind of gathering that is published in a newspaper would have an organization. So we have the Trilateral Commission. They're an organization. We can find documentation on them. There are other organizations that, in fact, Jeffrey Epstein was part of, that Leslie Wexner was part of, but these are then used for dual purposes. They're used to give people a chance to meet and talk, but also as a place to launder money and do other things. That doesn't exist with Mega. Why? Because Mega, the group, as it is being repeated over and over and over again, does not exist. I made it a point for my book, Jeffrey Epstein, Predator Spy, to make this distinction so that we can stop regurgitating information that the CIA and Mossad fed to the American people after a leak. But I see that some people continue to spread Mega, the false information. Now, when I first heard about Mega, I knew it was a spy. I had my suspicions. Initially, I believed, Mega could be Jeffrey Epstein. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. Let me just look at this a little bit more carefully, because Epstein was not necessarily in the White House all the time. And this was a person who had access to documents without necessarily Clinton's help, right? So access to documents. Now, let's also remember that Ghislaine Maxwell's nephews were working at the White House at the time. One under Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's just the level of interference in this White House. And frankly, if we go and examine the White House of other presidents, we will find the same kind of Zionist interference. If some of you are members of my Substack, you'll find my Zionist connection to John F. Kennedy from 1960 story and what happened there. So there's been Zionist connection to the White House for a very, very long time. But it almost came out in Clinton's presidency. So I had to figure out who Mega is, and I came up with a possible solution as to who the spy named Mega, codename Mega, was in the Clinton White House. When I came across the information as I was writing Ghislaine Maxwell, an unauthorized biography, and I realized, hey, there's this guy, his name is Samuel Passar. Samuel Passar is an attorney. He was a very close friend to Robert Maxwell. He was his attorney. He is the person who spoke to Robert Maxwell last before he disappeared off the Lady Ghislaine and died. He was also, Passar, the confidant, and I'm using that word in quotes because he was sent by Mossad to sort of keep JFK on track because he had made a promise to the Zionists that he would help them with the state of Israel. This is not something you're going to learn in school, or this is not something that you're going to learn from mainstream media. But however, Antony Blinken, who is our our Secretary of State now, was working also in the Clinton White House. He was working in the Barack Obama White House. He's been around, and now, when people think that that we really have a two-party system, what we have is a psyop, right? So when Joe Biden became president, what did he do? He made Antony Blinken Secretary of State. Antony Blinken is not only the stepson of Samuel Passar, but he is a very close friend of Ghislaine Maxwell for many, many, many years. All right, so his mother and Blinken's mother divorced or married Samuel Passar. Passar ended up having another child with his second wife. And this woman's name is Leah Passar. Leah Passar is Antony Blinken's half-sister and the daughter of Mossad-connected attorney Samuel Passar. She worked at the State Department during Bill Clinton's presidency. All right, and she also worked as the communications director at the National Security Council. So when I was doing some kind of just trying to see, well, what's out there, I realized that almost everything Leah Passar connected to Bill Clinton's White House was being like an eraser, a giant eraser was scrubbing everything about her offline. So I came to the conclusion, although I don't have, this is a speculation on my part, and I think I'm right, that actually Leah Passar is Mega, who was the mole in Bill Clinton's White House. So please get this information straight. Mega was not a group of people. That was misinformation. It's called a psyop. Mega was the spy, and I believe strongly that it was Leah Passar. Okay, let me move to part 3. I don't want to make today's podcast too long. For those of you who are members of my Substack, thank you, because some of you are members of my Epstein Project newsletter, which, by the way, went out yesterday. And so far, I've received so many nice emails telling me, oh, wow, this is really great. And then you became members of my Substack newsletter, which I find amazing. Although there have been some new people joining, and it's just been a very nice surprise. So what I did was I uploaded a new article today, about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's ties to Charles Manson. I don't think I have to tell you who Charles Manson is. I think you would know. And what caught my attention about the fact that, because I found several connections to Charles Manson, and I only included one. And the reason I included one is because it should have been, let's say, if mainstream media at least had a couple of daring journalists, or even if indie journalists were a little bit more probing, not just on the superficial level, but went layers beneath, this connection would have been found by now. I can't be the only person. I know that I sent out a newsletter about this perhaps a year and a half ago. So if I can find it and I have receipts for the connection, then why hasn't somebody else found it? And I guess I don't know if it's sloppy journalism. I don't know if it's just to continue what really is the biggest cover up of our lifetime. Like, this is what this is. This is the biggest cover up of our lifetime. However, on Substack is an article about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's connections to Charles Manson. And with that, I'm going to stop for today, and I'm going to wish you a really nice day. Like the video, subscribe, and thank you for everything.